I was gonna make this video when the PC version came out so I could get better footage, but at the same time, we had about a month when I started making this, so I said screw it. So all the footage from this video is from the Doo Quest 2 version. Retribution has been out for a couple months, and it's pretty good. But there's so much story in it, only an insane person would try to explain it in a
26 minutes and 20 seconds
video. Oh wait, I'm Random Nerd, and I make VR content right here on YouTube, and I'm here to explain to you the story of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Retribution. If you haven't seen my story explain video for the first Saints and Sinners game, I will link that down below. This video is going to cover what happened in between the games and the story of the second game, so it should go without saying, major spoilers ahead. There's a 3-month period in between the end of Aftershocks and the beginning of the second game. From a gameplay perspective, 3 new areas in New Orleans are now open, including the tower, which is now accessible to us, and a couple areas such as Via Carolla being expanded for story purposes. Some new items and materials are now accessible at night due to the tourist acquiring his UV flashlight in Aftershocks, but the most notable thing is how the tourist has turned his cramped graveyard bus into a fucking mansion. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but still, the tourist did a lot of work to turn his rundown bus into an actual home. Like damn, I want to live here in a zombie apocalypse. From a story perspective, a lot has also happened. The first notable thing is obviously the Axeman's introduction. The Axeman has been on a murderous rampage, going after the people on his hit list, with most of them being town members. In each area there is at least one dead person with a note next to them, marking their deaths as the Axeman's doing, all ending the same phrase.
From this burden, we are freed.
These aren't the only notes you can find though, as there are some letters from May to Garrick, hoping that he finds them and is able to reunite with her and Umbra, which yeah, that's not gonna happen anytime soon. One fateful day, the bells in Old Town start ringing, and don't stop for 3 days straight. The town is flooded with walkers, and anyone who remains is taken out by the horde, or was forced to flee. Old Town is now completely overrun, and visiting there is now a risk in itself. It's suggested later that the Axeman was the one who caused this, but we'll touch more on Old Town later. Just keep this incident in the back of your mind for a little bit. Sonny, also known as the Pawn King, reopens his doors for all to come to strike a deal with him at his pawn shop in Bywater. They may have been canonically open for business in the first game, but given that we didn't get to interact with him, or he wasn't referenced, to my knowledge, I think he's just a new character. I don't know. But what we do know is that he and the tourists, through both mutually knowing Henri, have made a deal to help each other out. The tower's influence has expanded across New Orleans, and Mama has created a new squad of heavily armored tower soldiers known as Eradicators, which we see and fight in-game, as well as their walker counterparts. JB is missing, and Georgia is confirmed to be dead, either at the tourist's hand at the confrontation with them and JB, or through some other cause, most likely the fight for the reserve. Either way, with JB's disappearance, the Reclaimed have mostly disbanded, and those who remain have set up their last and only camp at Rampart High School. That being said, a new faction, known as the Exiles, was established by a priest known as Father Carter. It's not really a faction, but it's more of a trade network that operates at night, in order to avoid as much conflict with the tower as possible. And they're able to be recognized by their green shirts compared to the tower's blue or Reclaimed red. The Pawn King and Father Carter start contacting each other through the trade network, and while the deal isn't finalized yet, Father Carter is able to enlist the help of the tourists through the Pawn King, not as a member of the Exiles, but as an ally and a way for him and the Pawn King to stay in contact. Carter asks the tourists, along with a few other exiles, to search Hotel Eclair for its blueprints. He wants to turn Hotel Eclair into a safe haven similar to the tower, and believes the blueprints could aid in helping the exiles clear it out. While in the hotel, a series of events leads to the death of most of the exiles that accompany the tourists, and when they eventually discover the blueprints, the floor collapses underneath the tourists, causing him to fall from the second floor to the first, knocking him unconscious. While unconscious, the tourist is visited by Henri in a dream, eerily similar to their first encounter in the bayou and their first discussion. Long story short, he gives the cryptic details of the backstory I just discussed, while causing the tourist to basically have the weirdest fever dream I have ever seen. We get our first glimpse at Mama, as Henri cryptically states,
"She wants you to know something, tourist. That a darkness has swallowed you. There ain't no use in fighting it," she says. "Just surrender. Let it devour you."
Before he bids the tourist goodbye, giving him one last message before, oh my god, the tower's falling! When the tourist wakes up, he's greeted by the last exile, calling down from the second floor. The tourist gets up, turns on his flashlight, and grabs the blueprints. but is quickly ambushed by a walker breaking down a nearby bathroom door. The exile tosses down a cleaver, and Torres uses it to defend himself from the one in front of him, along with a skew of walkers piling from a hole in the wall from the second floor. The exile yells for the tourist to run, and is killed by a walker sneaking up behind him, dropping his gun in the process, which the tourist also uses to defend himself. The tourist fights his way through the hotel, eventually being chased to a third-story balcony, which also collapses, knocking him unconscious again. Damn, twice in one day, not a lucky start. Fortunately though, he's picked up by the other exiles in the area, and he's taken to Father Carter, who confiscates his weapons while he's unconscious for safety reasons. The tourist explains what happened at the hotel, and hands over the blueprints to Father Carter, expressing his doubts about how the hotel could be turned into a safe haven. Despite the tourist's pessimism, Carter is optimistic about the future of the exiles, and before the tourist leaves, Carter asks him to deliver a letter to the Pawn King, agreeing to work with him, with some conditions that aren't revealed to us. The tourist heads back to the graveyard and spends the night in his new crypt crib. Upon waking up and checking the bus, he finds a strange note telling him to meet whoever put it there in the reserve. The tourist makes his way to the reserve comms room and finds the three people who left him the note. They introduce themselves as Sable, Barnes, and Echo. Sable and Barnes are tower members, and Echo is ex-proclaimed. They reveal that they're the leaders of a revolution to end Mama's reign and tyranny of the tower, and need the tourist's help in doing so. After he agrees to help, they ask him to interrupt the tower at a radio station in Bourbon Street, which they assume Mama is going to be using to spread tower propaganda. Sable gives tourists a recording of JB's last sermon, to be played after the tourist stops the tower from taking the radio station, and Echo gives him a broken walkie-talkie to keep in touch with them. The microphone doesn't work, but he's at least able to press a button to beep them back should they need to meet up with them. Barnes says she will scout ahead before the tourist reaches the street, and the tourist heads out shortly after. When he makes it to Bourbon Street, he heads to the second floor of the bar and stumbles upon a note that Barnes left, advising him to take a stealthy route into the radio station to avoid conflict. The tourist makes his way to the radio station either through the second floor through a secret passage in an abandoned Hawaiian restaurant, or through the first floor through a backyard garden area. I don't know what to call this place. Once inside, he finds a broadcasting studio on the third floor and starts to play JB's last sermon. However, it's interrupted by the power going out, and Torres heads downstairs to figure out what happened. Fighting his way through tower troops, he watches as the truck drives away with the generator that's powering the radio station. But he picks up a strange note one of the tower members dropped. The generator and power are unrepairable, so he waits for Sable to contact him and beeps her back to let her know that he's heading back to the reserve. He meets with the Revolution members in the reserve and tells them what happened. They were wrong about Mama's plan to flood the airwaves with tower propaganda, and are left puzzled as to why Mama needs a generator, given the tower mostly runs on solar power. The tourist gives Sable the map that he found, and she reveals it's a tower map of the location to some exile camps, revealing that Mama might be targeting them. After they're done talking, the tourist heads back home and sleeps for the night. The next morning, the Pawn King announces that he's open through the radio, and the tourist heads to Bywater to meet with him. The tourist meets Sonny in the pawn shop and hands over the note that Father Carter gave him earlier. Sonny has some resentment towards the priest, but ultimately agrees to the terms, and he and the tourist start talking about business. His daughter Desiree interrupts occasionally, and it's clear there's some tension between them, but nothing comes of it as of yet. Sonny makes a strange request for the tourist, asking him to go find some 9-volt batteries that can be located in a recording studio near Hotel Eclair, to which the tourist is kind of reluctant, but also agrees. The studio is usually locked, so Sonny gives the tourist a tip on where to find the code to get in, while also making a remark about how he and Henri once played in the studio with Slim Dog, an obvious reference to Snoop Dogg. The tourist heads to Hotel Eclair at night, finds the code in room 212, and heads to the recording studio. The door to the recording booth is locked, so the tourist makes his way outside, climbs along the rafters, and drops in through the second floor and finds the batteries.
The tourist. In the flesh.
The Axeman finally reveals himself to the tourist and makes his presence known. After some informal greetings, he reveals that he persuaded the Pawn King to set up this meeting, and also reveals himself to be Garrick Benoit, May's husband. Despite being presumed dead by the hands of the tower in the last game, he's alive, and he questions the tourist about May's fate, given that the tourist was the last one to be seen with her. Despite what the tourist says, Garrick thinks he's lying, and makes it clear that the tourist will face retribution. He says he'll spare the tourist's life for now, but only for as long as it amuses him, before he sets off an explosive charge that blows the wall behind the tourist open, which allows walkers to come flooding in. The tourist fights his way through them and gets the hell out of there, making his way back home. After a few days of silence, Desiree announces the reopening of the Pawn King through the radio and asks for the tourist to come talk with her. When the tourist arrives at the shop, Desiree greets him and explains that she wanted to speak with him one-on-one. So she made her father sick by putting some potent stuff in his beans. She explains that, yes, Sunny did set the tourist up, but only because Garrick threatened them. She says she'll help the tourist find stuff he needs to defeat Garrick, but only after doing a favor for her first. Her mom Lola is part of an exile group in Via Carolla, and she wants the tourist to meet with her and tell her it's not safe to leave yet. She tells him to look for a fiddleback symbol, which is in the shape of a spider, and the tourist leaves and heads to Via Carolla. But as he arrives, something is clearly wrong. As he arrives at night, the bells are ringing constantly, and as he gets closer, he notices tower troops fighting through swarms of walkers that the bells are attracting. Why are there tower troops around when the bells are ringing? He finds the source of the noise in the middle of the street, a giant mechanized bell constantly ringing with no way of stopping it. Whatever happened in Old Town is happening here too. He finds and follows the trail of fiddleback symbols with a UV flashlight, and fights his way through walkers and tower troops before coming upon the exile camp that was once here, which is now abandoned. Entering the house next to it, he finds a letter from Lola, scratched in the back of a photo of Desiree, and the tourist pockets it before attempting to flee Via Carolla. He makes his way to the nearest skiff, but finds it on fire, with an axe sitting next to it. Turning around and looking up, he sees the axeman staring down at him from the roof of one of the houses, taking responsibility for burning his skiff. The tourist runs to the other skiff, thankfully not on fire, and takes it to quickly get the hell out of there. The next day, he talks to Desiree the Pawn King again, and fills her on what he found, giving her the note that Lola left her. She reveals that Sunny has been trying to keep Lola out of Desiree's life ever since she was a baby, and she's been trying to contact her so they can leave New Orleans. In exchange for helping her, she tells the tourist that she has a friend named Whistles from Rampart who specializes in explosive weaponry, who likes to hang around with the exiles at night. Maybe she can be the hookup he needs. The tourist heads to Rampart at night and finds Whistles in the upper office of the gym. After some brief introductions,
You Whistles?
That put your mind at ease?
she tells the tourist that she can hook him up with a friend Maxwell, who can create the explosives he needs to kill the Axeman. The only problem is, he's in the school's library, and the Reclaimed are keeping them from meeting up with each other. The tourist leaves Maxwell and fights his way through the Reclaimed to the section of the school with the library. As he makes his way to the library's office, he avoids the explosive traps that Maxwell set up as it turns against the Reclaimed. While he's searching the library, he hears some struggling in the adjacent room. Going to investigate, he finds Maxwell trapped in a chair, surrounded by explosives, all of them connected to each other, ready to blow. In front of him is one of the Axeman's signature notes, confirming that he was responsible for putting Maxwell in this trap. The tourist tries to help, but the timer on one of the explosives starts beeping faster, and he can do nothing except duck for cover as they explode, killing Maxwell in the process. The tourist heads back to Whistles, seeing the Axeman once again stalking from the top of one of the school buildings, and tells her the bad news. She's sad about his death, but she still offers the tourist some DIY grenade launcher blueprints that she's been working on, in hopes that they can help him. On a side note, if the tourist finds a book that Maxwell had while they were searching for him, he can trade it with Whistles for a different book. They don't serve any gameplay purpose, but they're still cool to look at. After the two are
Done chatting.
the tourist heads back to the graveyard. Sometime while that's happening, he's contacted by Sable again, and he heads back to the reserve. Sable explains they need weapons and equipment to arm a revolution against the tower, and asks the tourist to connect them with the exiles. They need bolt cutters to access some of the locked areas of the tower to gain access to the equipment they need. An exile on Bourbon Street named Patricia! Yes, it's actually her name. Supposedly has some, but won't deal with Echo because they were ex-reclaimed. He agrees to help him out, and Sable asks for one last request, to give Patricia some flyers and pass them out, detailing that the exiles need to be ready for a revolution. The tourist heads to Bourbon Street and meets up with Patricia. Patricia does have the bolt cutters, but she needs a small favor first. She needs an egg timer, 3 dead rats, and some surgical scissors. She says he can find some scissors in the hospital, near the tower, but can't really help out with the other two. But before he leaves, he hands over the flyers, and Patricia says she'll pass them out. The tourist heads to the tower either at night or day, and finds the surgical scissors in the hospital. He takes those, along with the other items in Bourbon Street, and trades them for bolt cutters. Patricia mentions that she did put the flyers out, and when they start the revolution, the exiles will have their back. The tourist tells Patricia to start working with Echo, and heads back to the graveyard, where he's soon contacted once again by Sable. He meets with them, hands over the bolt cutters, and goes over what he and Patricia discussed. They thank him, and say they'll be going quiet for a bit until it's time for the revolution. As the tourist gears up for the next day, he hears over the radio that the Pawn King is open again. Upon entering the Pawn King, He sees Sunny this time instead of Desiree. He apologizes for setting the tourist up with Garrick, saying that he was just doing what he needed to survive. It's at this point where the tourist can mention that he found a photo with Sunny and Henri with Slim Dog on the radio station, and if he hands it over, Sunny will give the tourist a signed guitar by Slim Dog. They get back on track with their conversation, and Sunny tells the tourist that Father Carter has gone radio silent, and he needs the tourist to head to Hotel Eclair to make sure he's even alive. Now this mission is made for the daytime, but I was able to go at night, and I had to redo the mission 5 times because of crashes and this one bug with Father Carter that finally got fixed. So this footage is going to be a mix of multiple attempts that I've been trying to do for this mission. The tourist arrives at the hotel and finds some tower troops, dealing with them quickly before heading inside. He finds Father Carter, singing and drunk out of his mind at the bar. Carter explains that Mama came up to him in person with a proposition, offering him safety in the tower as a lucky few who would be chosen to ride out an oncoming storm, whatever that means.
I railed at her with a rage I never knew was in me.
And in retaliation, Mama brought back tower soldiers to kill everyone in there. But Carter was able to get away, and since then, has been drinking his stars away. The tourist tries to talk some sense into Carter, but he's drunk out of his mind. He is willing to talk though, but he asks the tourist to find something for him first. He left his crucifix of his mother's ashes in the Speakeasy, and wants the tourist to go in and get it for him. The tourist begrudgingly agrees, and Father Carter gives him a coin to get into the Speakeasy, which is hidden behind a soda machine in the alleyway. The tourist makes his way to the Speakeasy, puts the coin in, and crawls through an open air vent, spotting the crucifix in a sealed off entrance. He drops into the bar of the Speakeasy, and finds that the door leading to the room is locked shut by an electric lock. The tourist turns on the power in an adjacent room, but the generator bursts into flames, and music from the speakers around the Speakeasy start playing, drawing in walkers from all sides. The room is still locked though, so the tourist shoots the speakers to destroy them, as walkers flood in, breaking down the doors to the entrance, and give him access to the upstairs area of the Speakeasy. In the small area, the tourist can open a safe if he found a code for it in Hotel Eclair, and inside is a special bottle of bourbon called Scribe's Boon, as well as a few other goodies. The tourist heads upstairs, takes out the rest of the speakers, and finds a lever that unlocks the room with a crucifix. He gets the crucifix, and heads back to the hotel bar. He hands over the crucifix, and Carter asks him if he found any more booze in the Speakeasy. At this point, you can hand over the bottle of Scribe's Boon that you found, in which Father Carter will take a drink from it and explain its history. And in return, he will give you something. This mission was bugged when I recorded this, so I don't know what it gives you. He asks the tourist for one last favor, to put him out of his misery. Should the tourist decline, Carter spits multiple insults at the tourist, damning him to hell, basically. After dealing with Carter, he heads back to the pawn shop and tells Sunny the bad news. Sunny brushes it off, saying that things will continue without him, but tells the tourist that another problem has arisen. Garrick has been going around killing everyone, and the tourist and Sunny are next on his list. Sunny tells the tourist that he's been hiding out in Hotel Eclair in the sewers underneath the hotel. And after some preparation, the tourist heads to the hotel. He makes his way into the basement of the hotel, through the wine cellar, and comes across an old service elevator, which he takes down to the sewers. He wedges his way through the sewage, but an explosion collapses the floor underneath him, sending him down a level into a group of walkers. The tourist fights his way through the sewers, gathering supplies on his way, and after a bit of trekking, and with some climbing, he finds Garrick slaughtering a patrol of tower troops as their efforts to shoot through his armor are in vain. Garrick thinks the tourist is with the tower, and brought the troops with him, and he makes a threat saying that this is where the tourist will die.
You can no longer hide the truth, tourist. Mama is clearly your master. The tower is your altar. This hole in the ground will be your grave.
However, both of them are ambushed by more tower troops, and Garrick flees while the tourist fights through them. Upon climbing out of the sewers, the tourist ends up in the ward, where the Axeman has slaughtered his way through more tower troops, and broken into one of the shipping warehouses. The tourist follows him, seeing all the people that Garrick killed along the way, along with one final note from May to Garrick. The tourist drops into the warehouse, and the Axeman taunts him over the speakers, before coming out to finish the tourist himself. The tourist notices 3 crafting benches, along with some materials, and while running from Garrick and stunning him with his guns and grenade launcher, crafts the parts to multiple bombs, which he assembles to take Garrick down. The first 2 knock him onto his knees, but the third one weakens Garrick enough to where he can't continue fighting. Garrick, in this pitiful state, asks the tourist to put him out of his misery, and we finally get to see what he looks like. Holy shit, is that Justin Bieber? The tourist can either leave him or put him out of his misery. The tourist returns to the Pawn King to find Desiree holding a gun to Sonny. Sonny reveals that Mama made the same deal with him as she did with Father Carter, and Sonny, unlike Carter, agreed. But Desiree wants to be free rather than be locked up in the tower. Desiree at this point has lost it, yelling at him about keeping her from her mother, keeping her stuck with him in the Pawn King, and just wanting to be able to go out and survive on her own. Depending on what you say with her, she'll either shoot Sonny, or she will chicken out and Sonny will take the gun from her. In both cases, one of them asks you to leave, and this is where the story with Sonny and the Pawn King ends. When the tourist returns to the graveyard, he's contacted by Sable one last time. However, when he gets to the reserve, only Echo is there. She tells the tourist that Sable found a convoy leaving the tower, supposedly full of ammo, so she and Barnes, along with some other tower troops, are going to swipe it. She tells the tourist that the exiles are ready for revolution, and to meet Sable and Barnes in one of the tower parking garages at night. The tourist heads to the tower, finding the side gate unlocked for him by Sable, and sneaks his way into the parking garage, meeting Sable and Barnes in the upper level. The convoy they snagged had no ammo in them, only having more generators. Again, very odd for the tower. Sable mentions that there's a warehouse close by that's been heavily guarded by eradicators, and asks the tourist to go check it out, and to meet them back in front of the hospital afterward. The tourist sneaks into the warehouse, kills all the tower soldiers inside, and investigates the area. He finds blueprints for mechanized bells, a map of where they're planning to be set up, as well as a fully built one. The bells that were ringing in Old Town and Via Carolla, those weren't the work of Garrick. Those were the work of Mama and the tower. And that's why they need all those generators. It all makes sense now. The tourist quickly makes his way to the clinic, finding Sable, Barnes, and Echo there, and hands over the blueprints. The three of them are in shock, and they all scramble to try to figure out what to do next.
We need to run, now.
Out of nowhere, Sable gets sniped in the head, killing her instantly, and the rest of them are swarmed by tower troops, and the tourist makes a mad dash out of there and back to the graveyard. With Mama's plan fully realized, and nothing left that the tourist can do at that point, he prepares and waits for the oncoming storm of bells, and the revolution strike on the tower. The tourist wakes up 3 days later to the sound of bells ringing. The graveyard is swarming with walkers, and all he can do is join the revolution in taking down the tower. When he arrives, he finds multiple dead bodies of the tower troops, taken out by the exiles. Father Carter and Whistles can be seen fighting alongside them as they're both alive, Carter commanding the exiles to strike, and Whistles basically acting as his #1 fan.
Damn, this priest
Nothing better to do?
The tourist fights his way into the tower through dozens of enemies. He reaches it and begins his ascent to the top. We finally get our first look inside the tower, along with dozens of enemies gunning the tourist down. The tourist fights his way through the lower shopping mall before reaching an elevator and taking it to the top floor. However, the elevator breaks down during its climb, and the tourist is forced to get out on one of the office levels. Continuing his climb, the tourist makes his way to one of the residential levels, leading out to a balcony where we see people falling from the tower. The only way up is through some footholes inside the tower. And I'm not even gonna lie, this part had me basically crapping myself. After what feels like an eternity of climbing from floor to floor, fighting through multiple levels in the tower, the tourist finally gets to the top floor, the penthouse suite where Mama conducts her business, and we finally get to see Mama, standing at the edge of the plank that she forced so many others to walk off. The tourist approaches her, and she acknowledges his arrival, and their first and last conversation begins. She begins by taking in the scenery, complimenting how the sunrise is always beautiful from up there, and we get our first and only view of New Orleans from the top of the tower. She laments about the chaos that's ensuing, and uses the emptiness of the reserve to justify her reasoning for causing the bells. She believed that eventually, starvation and disease would kill off the population of New Orleans in a matter of months, and decided to save a lucky few, while subjecting the rest to a horrific fate. She is sorrowful, and has a feeling of emptiness about her victory of putting the bells into motion, and asks the tourist where she went wrong. After some back and forth, she realizes that one of the people she trusted poisoned the drink she held in her hand, and implies that her fate is sealed at that point. She then goes on to explain how the conflict between May, Garrick, and JB against her were all the result of their conflicting ideals, focused more on expression rather than the preservation of humanity, showing them all mercy, which led to the conflict between them and her. She asks the tourist what he sees when he looks out into the city, before offering him one final choice. She pulls out a key, which unlocks a control panel behind them, turning off the bells, and gives him the choice of turning off the bells or letting them ring. sentencing those who remain to a merciful death of the horde of walkers. After making the choice, Mama turns around and takes one last view of the city, and takes the walk herself, as she had done to so many others. A fitting end for such a character as her. If the tourist does take the key, he walks back and turns off the bells, and then walks back into the plank, taking in one last view of the city. Henri speaks to him one last time, giving one last speech about the tourist's decision before the game fades to black and the credits start rolling. And that marks the end of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Retribution. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game, and while I do think this game will get some DLC, similar to Aftershocks in the future, what we have in this game is still incredible, and is a really satisfying conclusion to these two games. What do y'all think? Is the story in this game just as good as the first? Is it better? Is it worse? Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments. Thank y'all once again so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, as I plan to make much more VR content in the future, and live stream various VR games, as well as the PC VR version of Retribution, right here on YouTube. I can't wait to share all kinds of VR content with you all, and hope to see you all in the future. Have a good night, y'all.